History hunter, where is he now?
I'm here at Bolton Hall Museum, and I have a message, a couple stories, and a plea. Well, the message is that Bolton Hall Museum is still closed, but check back to the website on occasion to get an update on that. Now, I'd like to take you back 100 years to 1920. What was happening? Well, the museum here had been built just 7 years prior for an agrarian utopian colony of Little Landers. But by 1920, while the name still persisted, for all practical purposes, the Little Landers were no more. Various factors conspired to affect their demise, but with the First World War and the Spanish flu finally in the rearview mirror, the local Record of the Verdugo Hills newspaper, founded just that year, reported a real estate boom had arrived and a building spree was beginning. And not just any spree, but a uniquely Tujunga-style spree. You see, this whole town is built on a big alluvial fan. Basically, all the debris scoured out of Haines Canyon over the past millions of years. And so what that means is a lot of rocks. And so word got out. Bring your own cement, and the rocks are free. The deals on land were also enticing, so stone homes begin to multiply and multiply throughout the 20s. And not just homes. And that brings us to the first church built in the midst of Little Landers Square. Up until 1920, church services were actually held in Bolton Hall. But an early pioneer and spiritual leader, Reverend William Wieman, began construction of the Wieman Chapel early in 1920. The bigger part of the church was built in the late 20s, but this eastern section was built in 1920 by Wieman's own hand. And you say, hey, history hunter, what gives? Where's the stone? And I say, this is what the building looked like after its construction. The stones were probably covered over with stucco in the 1950s, perhaps deemed as old-fashioned and in need of a facelift. But now I say, who's got a sandblaster? But there's much more to this story. The Wieman family home, consisting of his wife Alma and their 8 children, 6 boys and 2 girls, is just a block away. And I'm headed there right now. The Wieman family came to California from Missouri in the 1890s. And in 1902, Pasadena would host the first of what would become the Rose Bowl football game. In that game, Stanford would take on the mighty Michigan Wolverines. And the result of that game was Michigan routed Stanford 49-0. Now, I don't know for sure, but that may have inspired one of the young Wieman children. The 2 girls were Stella and Lois, and the boys were Henry, Ernie, Drury, Bill, Elton, and Don, from oldest to youngest. The 4 oldest boys had already made a name for themselves, all tremendous athletes at nearby Occidental College. Young Elton, as he came up through high school, was heralded by some as the best athlete in a family regarded as the greatest athletic family in all of Southern California's history. The Occidental coaches were salivating, and then Elton made his unexpected announcement. He would be playing football for the University of Michigan Wolverines. The Los Angeles Times reported, "The decision of mighty Elton, the 5th of the Wieman tribe, is a calamity of almost national importance." During his freshman year at U of M, the LA Times followed his progress, reporting, "The big, raw-boned freshman is stopping Michigan's top varsity players and leaving them piled up in a squirming heap." The next year, he was on the varsity team, and he was put on the line. His coach, Fielding Yost, proclaimed he was one of the greatest linemen ever. Soon, because of his sheer power, he was moved to the fullback position. One newspaper account says, "Wieman is a giant who musters nearly 200 pounds of muscle. The whole Michigan offense will be built around him." And as a kicker, Wieman is beginning to shine as well, after only days of practice in the toe art. In one game, Elton scored a touchdown, kicked 2 field goals, and 2 extra points. During his 3rd year, Wieman scored 125 of Michigan's total 304 points. For his upcoming senior year, the team unanimously elected him captain. However, Elton instead announced he would be leaving school to enlist in support of the efforts of World War I. Despite his absence, the team continued to recognize him as their captain, and they went on to be undefeated that year and proclaimed the national champions. When he returned from the war, he had one more year of eligibility to play, and once again he shined. From there, he went on to become Coach Yost's assistant, and in 1927, he was made the head coach of the University of Michigan Wolverines football squad. Later, he would become the head coach of the Princeton Tigers in 1938. He participated in World War II, and then in the 1950s, as athletic director at the University of Denver, he led the effort to prohibit the grabbing of an opposing player's face mask. In 1956, he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. And in 1962, he retired after more than 40 years as a college athlete, coach, and athletic administrator. There was a sad chapter back here at home. 100 years ago in 1920 on October 4th, Reverend William Wieman and his wife Alma were taking a drive in their Model T down Valmont Street here, then El Centro, when William suddenly swerved to avoid a collision, rolled his Model T, and they were badly injured. Alma survived her injuries, but William didn't make it. Alma needed constant care throughout her life, so her daughters, Stella and Lois, stayed at home to care for her and went to work at the school right across the street. Living with her injuries, Alma would continue to provide spiritual guidance in the area until her passing in 1939. And now, back to rock houses. A lot of people were bringing their cement and building arroyo stone homes in the 1920s. Don Wieman, the youngest of the Wieman boys, went on to build stone homes in the area and very likely stopped by here in 1921 to see this beauty going up. This is one of my favorite stone homes, of the 50-some structures that still exist in the area. This is the Hardin house, so named after its builder, Reverend Floyd Hardin, who had no known building skills, but nevertheless, it embodies the distinctive characteristics of the arroyo stone architectural style, which is so unique to Tujunga. Floyd was an interesting character himself. He came here after his release from jail for agitizing as a pacifist during World War I. Here we see him building his masterpiece. Hoping for a new start, he purchased his piece of paradise for only $10 down and a small monthly payment. He brought his bag of cement, gathered up all the stones that littered his property, and quickly the Hardin house rose. Its tower reminiscent of both the Wieman Chapel and the old clubhouse. Floyd came from a prominent family of Rockford, Illinois, serving as preachers going back over 5 consecutive generations. He himself delivered his first sermon at the age of 18. Despite this legacy of ministry, less than 2 years after building this house, he separated from his wife Rosamond. She took the children, Grace and Paul. He pulled up stakes, and they went their separate ways. After the arroyo stone building boom of the 1920s, our streets were lined with these unique, attractive homes, perhaps hundreds at their peak. One by one, they've been coming down in the name of progress, to where now there are less than 50. I myself hate to see them go. So when this property came up for sale last year, a bit of concern arose as to what its fate would be. A small group gathered to begin the process of seeking historic cultural landmark status in attempt to provide some protection. That is ongoing. But in the meantime, the property has come back on the market, so the concern returns. These homes are the beautiful symbols that still exist today of our community's very distinctive and quirky beginnings, unique to the city of Los Angeles and perhaps the whole of the country. There's really nothing like our little landers, colony of utopians layered with some 30 years of stone home building here all around the area. So here's my plea. If you're able to buy this home and save it, please do. If you're not able to buy a home but you know somebody that would buy it and preserve it, let them know about it. And if you can't get that far involved and you just want to help, go to our website, boltonhall.org, and leave a message that you'd like to help. This isn't the first, and it won't be the last that needs saving. That's it. That's my plea. From Bolton Hall Museum, And man, do I love this place. In the town of Tujunga, Tujunga, the best little town in the USA, the greatest country that has ever been. Happy birthday, America.